Going for a hike or setting up camp feels like a retreat into nature's tranquility. But under the brush, there is a microscopic biological threat waiting for a host to walk by. This chart shows the incidence of Rocky Mountain spotted fever in the United States. In the year 2000, there were around 500 reported cases. By 2017, that number had spiked to over 6,000. While common antibiotics easily clear the infection, the early symptoms mimic a routine flu. Doctors frequently overlook the pathogen until it has multiplied past the point of simple recovery. Missing that narrow window for treatment has severe consequences. Without intervention, the mortality rate for elderly patients reaches 50%. The culprit driving this surge is a genus of bacteria known as Rickettsia. Over millions of years, these bacteria adopted an extreme strategy called genome reduction. They discarded large portions of their own DNA, stripping their genetic code down to a bare minimum footprint of just 1.1 to 1.5 megabases. Throwing away the genes needed to produce their own nutrients made them obligate intracellular parasites. They physically cannot survive on their own in the open environment. Outside of a host cell, they die. To compensate for the survival mechanisms it lost, Rickettsia is forced to steal. It must hijack human cells and drain their resources just to exist. Since this bacteria cannot survive in the open air, it needs an armored transport vehicle to jump from one host to the next. It relies entirely on blood-feeding arthropods. For the spotted fever group, the clade responsible for Rocky Mountain spotted fever, that primary delivery vehicle is the tick. This diagram illustrates how Rickettsia sustain themselves. The pathogen passes from an infected mother tick into her eggs, maintaining infection as larvae hatch. On the right, the adult tick transmits the bacteria. When feeding, bacteria are injected into the human bloodstream. The typhus group of Rickettsia relies on a grittier delivery method. Transmitted by the human body louse, the bacteria aren't injected through saliva. Instead, the louse excretes them in its feces. When the bite itches, the host accidentally scratches infected feces into microtears in their skin. The specific insect that bites you determines exactly how the pathogen enters your body and dictates the trajectory of the disease you develop. Once inside the human bloodstream, Rickettsia seeks out a specific target, the endothelial cells that line the inner walls of our blood vessels. In panel B of this medical illustration, bacteria use surface proteins to trick the host membrane into swallowing it whole. Moving to panel C, they drain the cell's ATP for replication. Finally, they hijack actin filaments, propelling themselves directly into neighboring cells. Through this microscopic hijacking, the bacteria turn the plumbing of your circulatory system into a protected, continuous highway for their own reproduction. When millions of endothelial cells are simultaneously drained and damaged, the microscopic invasion triggers a macroscopic crisis. The cellular barrier lining your blood vessels fractures. Doctors call this structural failure vascular permeability. The body's internal plumbing loses its integrity, and fluid starts leaking out of the bloodstream and into the surrounding tissues. This widespread leakage leads to the most severe clinical outcomes of the infection. Patients suffer from deep internal hemorrhaging, and fluid floods the lungs, creating a condition known as pulmonary edema. This diagram shows the specific pattern doctors look for to catch the infection in time. While a typhus rash generally spares the face and hands, the Rocky Mountain spotted fever rash targets the palms and soles. Because the bacteria hide inside the cells where many drugs fail, recognizing these external rashes is the only way to intercept a systemic collapse. The steady rise in cases is driven by human behavior. Increased outdoor recreation is repeatedly bringing human hosts directly into established tick habitats. A microscopic pathogen that stripped away its own survival tools is now conquering human physiology through evolutionary desperation. Surviving this microscopic minimalist parasite requires vigilance. We have to understand the specific vectors that carry it, recognize the warning signs on our skin, and strike back before the hijacker takes full control of the host.